He goes, draw blood. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, you know. And so then Nikki started biting me. And
biting you?
Yeah,
Where?
biting me. Well, it started on the leg.
Sure, like it always does.
Yeah.
If you're getting bit by somebody, it starts on the leg. Yeah.
To the X5 podcast. We're back again for another week. We appreciate everybody that subscribed and commented, and we even have some questions today for our big guest. First off, let me go around the room and introduce everybody. We've got Cassio back another week. We've got Cassio and his roommate from Los Angeles, Big Al, who's now a publicist. And also, as usual, we don't know why he's here. No, I'm just kidding. He's our new audio engineer, Bert Wallace in the house. Saint Germain is here. Dustin's back in the control room. I mean, this room is full today. Yeah. Got my best friend Jacob Bunton here. And we have a real wise guy on the couch today with his partner, Mikhail. This is Mark Weiss, everybody.
Hey.
Famous photographer.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, man. We couldn't be more excited to share some of the stories you have. You're an archive of stories from the 80s, and one of the most legendary photographers that has ever been around that's photographed music. So tell everybody how you got started doing it.
Well, I got started by mowing lawns, believe it or not.
I'm familiar with that shit.
I was 12 years old, and I had a steady bunch of customers in my neighborhood, and then this one guy used to mow his lawn himself. Didn't mow it for a few weeks, so I knocked on his door, and I said, "You need your lawn mowed?" And he goes, "I mow it myself." Yeah. And I said, "Well, it doesn't look that way." And so he kind of looked at me, and we kind of smirked at each other. And he says, "I'll be right back." And he came back with this camera, this Bell & Howell Canon camera, and he said, "I'll tell you what, kid. If you mow my lawn for the season, I'll give you this camera." And I looked at it. I'm like, I could probably hawk that for a couple $100. So I said, okay, deal. And we shook hands. And then after 8 cuts into it, he said, "Here, kid, you can have the camera." And I got it. And then there was a pawn shop down the road. And I was like, it was like one of those things where, should I sell it? Should I keep it? And I just said, it felt so good in my hand, this big piece of metal, I didn't know anything about it.
You remember what it was? What model?
Yeah, it's a Bell & Howell Canon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I still have it hanging in my office.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I just put it on my shelf, and I looked at it for a while and kind of sat there for, about 6 months. And then I went to my school. I was in, middle school. I was in 7th grade, 8th grade, I believe. Yeah. And that season, I went to my teacher that had a photography class, and I said, "Can you teach me how to develop film?" I told him what I had. Yeah. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to develop film.
How old were you?
I was 12, 13. I just turned,
my gosh. I just turned, to say 17 or 18.
I just turned 13, and it was just all magical. It was a dark room. It was a cylinder. You go in this thing. I was into space at the time, because that's right when it was 69. That was right when the moon expeditions were going on. So I was into that whole space thing, and you go in this dark room, and there's the dark room lights, the red lights, and the timers, and I'm this kid going, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And then you put this piece of paper in, and it magically appears. So I did that. I took pictures of my dog and my brother, who used to ride motorcycles, and that's what I did kind of for a year. Yeah. Fast forward, I got bored after a while shooting my dog and my brother. Yeah. And anytime my family needed pictures at events, so I put the camera down and kind of put it on my shelf. And then a year and a half later, when Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young was playing at Roseville Stadium, 1974, one of my first concerts.
No shit.
I went there with my brother and some friends, and this guy, Kenny Reff, had this camera. And he had a couple girls with him, and I said, and we just had 50,000 people. I just happened to bump into him, and I was on the, all the way in the back,
Yeah.
And I said, "Where you going, man?" You know, he's friends of the family. And he said, "I'm going to take some pictures in the front." I said, I kind of watched him go to the front until I couldn't see him anymore. And then a couple months later, I went to a family, you know, his parents were friends with my parents, and he showed me the pictures, and they were hanging up. And then he, you know, I go, "Wow, you can do that?" And he told me he was, you know, selling them. And I was like, all right, this is something maybe I might want to do. And that's really how it started.
It's also a free ticket to shows if you can get photo passes, right?
Yeah, well, that eventually did happen a couple years later.
Awesome.
That's back when tickets were like, what, $5 to get in these shows?
Yeah, but he also taught me how to sneak into concerts and not pay the guys. You know? So you didn't need a ticket. They sold
All right, expound on that. Let's go.
Yeah, the multi-talent.
Can we still do that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but these sold out shows, you know, you couldn't get a ticket, and when you did, you know, it still cost some money. And I was still like mowing lawns, and you know, you had to buy film and everything. So I used to like have fake stubs, and then when the guy ripped them, you had to like go buy like 3 guys. And when you got to the guy that ripped it, you had to grease them, so you throw him $5.
Right.
Know? And sometimes I bring friends with me, and I pretend I have all their tickets, and you know, I usher them in and then give them like $20, you know. So I did that for a while, and then I also had to sneak my cameras in at the time. So I had like Fry boots. I stick film in one, a lens in another.
Wow.
The body down my back, you know, with a strap. Had some like, you know, necklaces to cover up the strap.
Yeah.
And I did that, and it was kind of fun and adventurous. And I would, you know, sell my pictures the next day and out of my high school locker. My teachers didn't even mind. I had signs on, go to room 140, and you know, get Led Zeppelin, you know, Peter Frampton pictures, and
awesome.
You know, met a lot of people. You know, kind of got me out of my shy spell, and you know, got people talking, and that's kind of how everything kind of happened. And it was just.
I think you could probably. I think the best way to sneak into a show nowadays, if you just had a bucket of ice on your shoulder. And you just start walking backstage, nobody in their right mind would have the balls to go, "Hey, man, where you going with that bucket of ice?" You know?
I had a buddy who got a box of pint liquors, and he put a towel hanging out of his back pocket and put on a sweatband on his wrist, and he came in and he was like, "I'm with the liquor distributor," and he came right in the bar and was back until finally somebody's like, "Do we make an order like at midnight? What are we doing? Why is there a delivery guy walking around right now?" But it's the same thing. You just walk in like you own the place.
The biggest one that we ever did was in New Jersey, the PNC Art Center. We just went to.
We brought a bus.
Yeah, we were gonna go. We were on tour, and Iron Maiden and Dream Theater were playing at PNC in New Jersey, and we pull up in our bus, and they just assume we're like Iron Maiden or Dream Theater, and they wave us backstage. And like, so we went in through the backstage. The problem is after the concert was over, getting back to our bus. But
Yeah.
And Mark, your first big thing was Peter Frampton, right?
I mean, one of my first concerts I shot was Peter Frampton, 1975, and I was so far back, and I didn't know it mattered how far you were. So I had nosebleed seats at that point, which in the Madison Square Garden, they were called Blue Heaven. You were all the way up there. But I just figured I'd take pictures and then go in the darkroom and blow them all up and get some good photos. When I did it, everything ended up being like a big blob of grain, you know? So that was a lesson learned. But a year and a half later, he played 77, and I snuck in. I got really close, got some great shots, and sold them. And then fast forward another 2 years, when I started working for Circus and getting assignments, my first big rock star was Peter Frampton when he did an album, and I did the publicity shots. And I went to his house. I was 19. You know, I went to his house and just shot him around, you know, jumping on his trampoline with his dog Rocky. And this is after Peter had his motorcycle accident. He was after Frampton Comes Alive, you know, so, and he didn't want like a whole big, you know, a big entourage. He just wanted a photographer, simple. So they matched me up with him through a friend, George Dassinger, who was their publicist. And, you know, it was kind of like my first meeting with a rock star.
Yeah.
And still to this day, it's like, you know, one of my favorite, you know, shoots. It was an at-home. I just spent all day with him, and
And it gave you credibility with other artists.
It
Is that
did.
where
Well,
it
once
started?
I had that, yeah, it definitely did something. Gave me confidence, and I started getting assignments from magazines and meeting the rock stars.
Dude, Circus Magazine was so huge to me when I was a kid. I could not wait for that magazine to come out. Like Hit Parader, Circus Magazine. I remember when that.
And Metal Edge and
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah.
They were all of our heroes.
Yeah, magazines back then, those are the golden, I call it the golden days of rock and roll. You know, it's not the 50s, I say it's the 80s because
Right.
everything was happening. You had the magazines, you had the MTV videos, everyone knew who you were. If you managed to get that deal, like me and Jacob were talking last night, you know, if you were one of those chosen few, you feel like you've made it. You know, you got through all the stuff and you were the chosen few. Maybe you weren't the best vocally or the best musicians, but you got there with your stamina, with your songs, with your vibe, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have to be like, you know, a virtuoso in your craft.
Right.
You just needed to have a little bit of everything, put it together, and have some drive.
Did they bring you out on a bus, or were you just designated at shows back then? Did bands ever bring you out on tour with them for the whole tour?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was my favorite thing. You know, it's like I would be on the road with Motley Crue, and then I'd go out with Rat for a couple weeks, and then I'd go out with Ozzy. And I would stay on their bunks with them. You know, they clear their junk bunks, they call it, you know, and they clear it out and they throw me in there.
Did they ever sit you down and go, listen, you tell anybody what goes on this bus? You're a dead man?
Well, I said, if you tell anyone what goes on in my so how about we're even, you know?
Yeah.
There's initiations, you know, and I remember my first initiation that I had was with the most memorable too was with Motley Crue. It was 1984. They were opening up for Ozzy. They were just, you know, slamming it.
Yeah.
And I was out with Ozzy, and Ozzy was a little boring at that point because everyone was trying to get Ozzy sober.
Right.
And so there was no booze on it or anything. So the Motley guy said, hey, Mark, you know, why don't you come with us? And I knew them from a couple of years ago because I did their first photo shoot for Weissguy magazine.
Yeah.
That was their first national exposure where I shot them with naked women, half naked.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of exposure. So we quickly became fast friends. And then when they saw me with Ozzy, they were like, come with us, man, you know, come with us. And so I said, okay, let me ask Sharon if it's okay. And she said it was all right, go have fun. And I remember Nikki said, okay, come on, Mark, let's go. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, you know, happy and, you know, walking like this. This is going to be fun, you know. And
are you 21 at this point?
It's like 22 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. So this is 1980. Oh, well, yeah, this is 84. So I'm up there already.
Yeah.
Maybe 23.
I'm up there already.
So Tommy's sitting in the driver's side, and the driver's, you know, sitting by the wheel, giving a big old grin. And I'm coming on, and all of a sudden, Tommy puts his leg out, his big leg. He has got a big old leg, and I couldn't cross it. He stopped me, and I'm like, okay, now what? And then all of a sudden, Nikki goes, draw blood. I'm like, what? He goes, draw blood. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, you know. You know. And so then Nikki started biting me. And
Biting you?
yeah,
Where?
biting me. Well, it started on the leg.
Sure, like it always does. Yeah. If you're getting bit by somebody, it starts on the leg. Yeah. And then what?
Well, he bit me, and then he's like, he wanted me to, you know, bite him, I guess. I figured it out. And I'm like, dude, I ain't biting you, man.
Yeah.
And so he started biting me again and not letting go. And then he kept biting me, you know, and
Drawing blood.
and then Tommy's like, here. And I'm starting to feel pain at this point.
Yeah.
And Tommy's like, here, he brought me a bottle of Jack. And he's like, oh, give me some Jack, man. You know,
I thought it was going to be hydrogen
I had a little bit of
peroxide.
pain. I had a little pain. And so after, it seemed like hours, but it was probably 10 minutes or something of him biting me and me refusing to bite. And I had the Jack was the Jack was taking effect. So I said, all right, fuck it. You know? So then I bit him. Oh, and
Where'd you bite him, leg?
Yeah.
It always starts on the
I
leg.
think I got him in the shoulder or something. But while this was going on, Mick Mars was in the back watching this thing, just shaking his head. It's like, leave him alone, leave him alone. And then Vince comes on while this thing is occurring, like just passes by like it's a normal thing.
Yeah.
Which I found out later, it is their initiation. I'm not the only victim. I think Eddie Van Halen was, they tried to get him, which he wasn't too kind to it. I think he walked off. He said, "Screw this, I'm out of here." But there's definitely some other people that got bit. And then Vince kind of walked by, just walked by us like it was like a normal thing, just shaking his head again, like, "Come on, guys."
He's always been like the dad of the group, I picture.
So that was it. It was my initiation. And then later on, after drinking the bottle of Jack, because it was painful and there was blood coming out, later that night, me and Mick, we were watching the Three Stooges, like for a marathon. And, one of the scenes is like they go, "Hey, Weissguy." And so he started doing that to me. Then after that whole trip, because I was out for about 2 weeks, I went back. I was working for Faces Magazine, which was a rock mag.
I remember that.
And we did a pictorial on that trip. And we got some awesome shots of them at a cornfield with grass and just on the bus, just doing everything you could think of. And whatever we could publish was in that layout. And I called it said photography by Mark, and I put in quotes Weissguy Weiss. And
that's how you got the
how it
nickname
got started.
Big
Yeah.
Mars.
That's amazing. We've got some of your albums that you shot here around the studio. If you see that.
Yeah, talk about your transition from doing the live stuff to all of a sudden like doing some of the most iconic album covers of all time, like starting with "Stay Hungry."
Yeah. Well, you're a photographer. Magazines are cool to get in there. One of my first covers on Circus Magazine was Ozzy in a tutu, and that was fun because everyone talked about it. But they only
bring that up. We want to see that on the screen. Bring that up, Dustin. Search Circus Magazine, Ozzy tutu.
Yeah. So there's the picture of Ozzy in the tutu. One of my first photo shoots with him. It was supposed to be for Most Athletic. It was a high school yearbook in Circus Magazine, and I got an assignment to shoot the cover, which is supposed to be a cool photo of Ozzy on the cover. This is 1981, so this is right when Blizzard came out, and then the editor wanted me to take a photo of Ozzy with something athletic.
Here it is above you.
Right.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
He's in the all pink. That's
and
strong.
so I got a tutu and got some boxing gloves, and he put it on, and it was only supposed to be a black and white photo, but the editor loved it and put it on the cover, we got a lot of talk for it. So here's the Prince of Darkness wearing a pink tutu.
Incredible.
And they weren't the Osborne camp wasn't pleased with it at the time, because it's like it wasn't supposed to be that. It was supposed to be a small black and white photo. I mean, I shot it in color and gave it to there. I was one of my first, I just started to shoot for Circus, and that was my first cover. They just wanted all the film. I had no control over it.
Right.
And so it didn't put me in good standings at the time. But then once they got all this publicity and everyone started talking about it, and then the records were doing good and everything was happening, I was back in the camp, and then we did more crazy stuff like Ozzy in the bunny outfit.
Yeah.
They embraced all my crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And it was just fun. So getting back to the album cover.
Right.
So I did that, and that was fun. But magazines are only on stands for like a month, and then they go away.
Mm-hmm.
Album covers are there forever.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And everyone had always, in the 70s, reading the album credits, and that was the thing. So I didn't know how it was going to happen. And again, it just fell in my lap when I got a call from the manager of Twisted Sister and said, the guys want you to do a photo shoot with the band for the cover. And what I found out later was they assumed that I did a bunch of album covers already.
That's good.
When I was just talking to Dee, he's like, "Mark, we thought you were like already did a lot of albums. We didn't know this was your first one. We never would have let you. We would never would have let you do it.
Right? It's too late now.
Yeah. So So what happened was they knew I was in all the magazines, and the art director wanted a rock and roll photographer, and I guess they saw like the Ozzy Tutu, and I was Ozzy's photographer.
Yeah.
Being Ozzy's photographer for in the early '80s was pretty big,
That's, huge.
And so that was known. So all these suits at the record company just see rock photographer, Twisted Sister, crazy rock band, crazy rock photographer, let's get them. So then Mendoza came in and gave me the idea, or his idea, to do this Stay Hungry cover, but it was supposed to be 5 guys in makeup, 5 guys without makeup in the same room. And I had to build this set. So I've never done any of this before. My father was in home construction, and he helped me build the set.
Wow.
And I got all the props, and I just kind of like winged it, really,
Yeah.
And then at the last, that morning, I went to the deli, and I got this big bone. And I said, "How much is that bone?" And he goes, "You can have it." and then I just took it and then put it in the middle. It was smelly and it was rotten.
Yeah.
And that was
this.
Right.
That was like a 22-hour shoot or something.
Right.
wasn't
So a long story short, we did a bunch of photos like we did with makeup, without makeup. This is before Photoshop. This is like all the stuff they had to do. And I had a light bulb in the middle with props, and it just didn't work with the 2 bands. And it didn't work because I wasn't getting any energy from D. He was just kind of standing there. And
That's hard to imagine. You don't get energy from D.
Well, also what I found out recently was that D was holding back because it was supposed to be a band photo, and D was always taking the spotlight. And for this is the first album, he was just gonna kind of hold back and just try to let the band shine through and just blend in. And that's what he did. He just blended in. So there wasn't that magic energy in a photograph that you really look for. Right. And I was just going through. I had so much going on, and so many variables, and a couple of the guys in the band were giving me the finger and putting their fingers in their nose and just messing around. And it's like me and D kept looking at each other like, just do the best you can. And I just met these guys really for the first time. And they were cooperative. Then we did photos without makeup. And so 20 hours later, we called it or 21 hours later, we called it a wrap. And I said, "Hey, let's anyone want to do any individuals in this, in the they did them real quick, but that was it. And then they kind of walked out. We had enough. Yeah. And I said, D, why don't you stick around a little longer? He goes, yeah, okay, no problem.
Yeah, it's only been 21 hours. Sure, man. I got more time to burn.
Everyone left. This is 3 a.m. at this point.
No shit.
Wow. It was 3 a.m, and we were tired, but we were wired,
Had y'all used that bone in any of the shots yet?
He didn't hold it. It was just on the table.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So he's in the room, and I'm just going, come on, D, you can give me something. Give me something. And I saw the bone there, and I just took the bone and I threw it at him. He grabbed it, and then he just started hitting the walls, making animal noises, and the cops actually called. I was in New York City in an apartment building, and
and they show up, and that opens the door.
I said, D, you get the door.
No. The cop opens the door. He's like, draw blood.
On
this
the
is
leg.
our last photographer's leg.
and like the last frame on that roll of 36 was that photo, and I turned it into the record company, and it was almost the demise of the band, because when that happened, like the band was like, I didn't know that they were pissed at me because I took it, but it was a decision to use it, but I think they were mad that I didn't get a great shot of the band that had that vibe. And what Dee told me later on was that he was holding back because of what he talked to the band about.
Yeah.
And when they were gone, I said, D, don't hold back and let's go for it. And he did, and that's where we got it. And that's just
and
the
you
magic
knew the label was going to pick that one, or did you?
I didn't even know. I didn't, you just
turned it all in?
Just turned it in, and then when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that says Stay Hungry.
Yeah. That might be why the very next album, the band was like, you know what? we're just going to put a manhole on the cover.
Right.
To avoid that.
So after that, we went with the formula. Then he asked me to art direct and design this the Come Out and Play, which unfortunately didn't do so well. Nothing to do with the photography.
Right.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Mark, good job, buddy.
I mean, because that cover was like, to me, was like my most challenging and most rewarding, because, you know, they pulled out the stops, you know, because it went they sold so many records on Stay Hungry. They just said, all right, D knows what he's doing. Let's let him run with it. And unfortunately, they shouldn't have let him run with it. They should have, you know, really thought about the next thing, because I think Leader of the Pack was the single on that. And that
Leader
was probably,
of the Pack was
it was probably a mistake, you know, that they did that. It was, but, you know.
Every band, Monday morning quarterbacks their career.
Yeah.
Like where they could have made better.
But the pop-up and the texture of that Come Out and Play. I still have the street in my garage. My father made that because he was in construction.
Yeah.
That's 2 tons sitting in my garage with the Twisted Sister logo. It's going to end up in the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Wow.
The museums. And I also have, which I found later, I didn't know, it's like I moved the street to another part of my garage, that on the back I had a bag in it, and it was the fingernails and the mummy wrap. So I have all that.
How did you have the wherewithal to keep all that shit back when you were doing it? I would just think that you would be like, this is going to last forever. Hell, I'm not keeping any of this stuff.
I left it in my parents' garage, and then when I had my own house, like 10 years later, I brought it into there and just forgot about it. And then, but yeah, I got all, because we wrapped them in mummy, like this mummy wrap, and it's all oily, and the fingernails, and so all that's gonna, you know, be somewhere. And
what was the next band that saw Stay Hungry and went, we need this guy?
Yeah, Wasp. He had The Last Command.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which Blackie's the only one on the cover.
Yeah.
I see a pattern.
Yeah. If Mark comes, your lead singer's about to stand out a little bit.
Dude, we need you to do the next Lynham album cover.
Right. Okay.
Jacob's always trying to be in the front.
I know you've told this story a million times, but the Slippery When Wet story, you got to tell on our podcast. There's got to be people out there that haven't heard it before, but I've heard it. It's so great. Like that, here it is here.
The 2 different covers.
The 2 different covers and how this came to be.
Yeah, there's actually 3 different covers, really. I mean, or really 4 and 5, which is in my book, The Decade That Rocked. I really go into detail, but I'll quickly go through it. So it was first, the album was going to be called Wanted Dead or Alive, because of the song. Yeah. And the idea was to have them grow beards and wear Billy the Kid hats, and look like little gangsters, or like a gang. And I would shoot them and make a Wanted poster, and like that would be it. And so each one came into my studio all different times, and I shot them, and then I made this this 12-inch by 12-inch poster, and I put Wanted in, and I burnt it and took a photo, and that was it. And then they decided to change the name. Actually, before that, we did that part of it, and then they said, well, we really want to have the band looking good, not like, goofy, like that. Yeah. So we came up with an idea they were recording in Vancouver. They flew me out there. I found an old, like, abandoned warehouse somewhere. And the idea now was to have the band looking kind of cool, rock cool, and have this poster that I made in the background, Wanted, and they were like in this, warehouse or this area where they were hiding out, and that was the photo. That was, again, still with the title Wanted.
Right.
And that's when they just decided not to use the title for whatever reason, and that's when we got inspired by the Number 5 Club in Vancouver, where the strippers would be going through the plexiglass. Yeah. And there were so many Slippery When Wet signs all around Vancouver because there was all hilly and everything. And I don't know if it was Doc or John or Richie, or it might have been Doc, that, like, let's call it Slippery When Wet.
Yeah.
And when they told me that, I was happy. Yeah. Because there's more work for me and more stuff to do, and girls were involved now.
Yeah.
Instead of guys with beards growing, And so when they finished mixing, we went back to New Jersey and we did a photo shoot across from John's apartment down the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
And we got all their cars and motorcycles together and all the guys' girlfriends. And then we did a photo shoot for this, to play off of Slippery When Wet. We got these T-shirts that says Slippery When Wet on it. And we just did a photo shoot. We didn't have any idea for an album cover. We didn't know if that was going to be the album cover. It was just a photo shoot. And then the shot was looking good, but all their girlfriends didn't have like large breasts.
How did you communicate that to them? Ladies.
And they were pretty, they were hot and everything, but the shirts, they weren't filled out, So I said to my friend Danny Sanchez, who was helping me out on the shoot, and I said, can you go to the beach and just find me some girl with big breasts?
No problem.
And Tico, the drummer, goes, I'll help you, Danny. And they
Now we figured out that Bert knows around here. Bert, that's your new job.
I like that job.
And they came back with Angela, who ended up being dead center on that shot, which ended up being the back cover of the one that they printed. And then John said, let's take Angela in my studio and just shoot her with a shirt.
How was the England there? And he said, draw blood.
I got a plexiglass, like the Number 5 Club. That's what they did. They went in these showers and they wear T-shirts and they hose them down with the shower. And of course, things start popping out. And so we did that with Angela. But this time we didn't have a shower, so we had ice, and that helped things out. And I only had to shoot a couple frames, but I ended up shooting like 10 rolls of film.
I just couldn't quit. I don't know why.
I don't think I got it yet.
This damn camera won't work.
So that was it. I turned it in. We had a concept. They printed, a couple 100,000 copies, and it was a done deal until John saw the cover, and they put a pink border around it. All right, and this is this is my take on the whole thing, because there's different versions of it.
Yeah.
Like John's got a version, and I kind of, both of our versions come together, and I've never really talked about it, but I think I figured it out. So what happened was, everyone signed off on the cover with the girl, and at that point, the PMRC was going on. I actually went to the PMRC with Dee Snider when he talked for freedom of speech, and we ended up getting a label, the warning labels and all that. So I went there with him. So that was going on at that time. And I think what happened, because what John says is that when he got the picture in Vancouver, when he was finishing the record, he got a Xerox of the photo and he approved it. It was a black and white fax. It took forever to come through, and it was black and white. So he approved it. They printed it, and he didn't see until after it was printed the pink border.
Right.
So I think what went through his head is like, we can't have this out there with the pink border. And the art director said, well, we did it because it matched the girl's nail polish, and that's why we did it.
Right. So
they could have just got rid of the pink border and made it blue, or didn't have a border.
Right.
So I think at that point I think he knew that the PMRC thing was happening, and they weren't putting sexual album covers out on the, out there.
Yeah, Walmart.
Yeah,
and stuff
they didn't want to be
that.
jeopardized. I think he took that opportunity to say, let's change this. Let's see. Even though you printed it, I never approved the pink, so that was his thing. And then the record company said, okay, well, come up with something. We'll eat the 200,000 copies that we just printed.
Right.
And it was released in Japan, so there's copies floating around in Japan. Ooh. And then John said, do you got any ideas? I was like, not really, I kind of like.
How much time did they give you to correct this shit?
They had a few days to come up with something, or they would have had to use what they did. So then John just called me up a couple days later and said, hey, I'm coming over. You get a black plastic bag, get a water bottle, and I have an idea. So we came over, and it was hanging up, and he just said, I put some oil in the water so it would drip down nice, and I just sprayed it on. He just spray it on it. I sprayed it, and then he just wrote "slippery when wet." Wrote it, and I took a photo, and he didn't even wait for the Polaroid. He just said, "Just send that to the record company." And I was like,
"Isn't that crazy?"
And that was it.
Thank God he spelled it right. You get one shot.
So that's it in a non-nutshell.
Well, that's great. I thought you had like minutes to do it. I thought they were like sitting on the other line waiting. That's interesting.
And then they used the back cover photo from the video they did. Just to, they did all these videos back there, and they weren't playing arenas yet. They were doing well. They were opening up for like 38 Special, and they were an opening band, and they weren't really selling out arenas. But in the MTV videos that Wayne Isham did, that was the whole thing. Let's show them that they're selling out in front of these arenas. Nice. And that's where that photo was.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Is that your highest selling album cover?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest selling. Yeah. Millions and millions.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I think that was the first album I've ever bought.
That is?
Yeah.
Like vinyl?
So. No, I bought that shit on cassette.
It was out on cassette then.
That's really cool because before that record, they were the opening band for Rat. They literally opened for Rat in arenas, and that record but definitely changed everything.
I can't imagine living in the same city as somebody that got that big. They were in the same town as you grew up in, right?
Yeah, I was shooting Motley Crue. The thing is, when you're out there, one door opens,
right.
Another one's. I just keep going.
Word of mouth started.
Word of mouth, and Doc McGee, which I've known from the late '70s when he was managing Pat Travers. I gave him a ride back from the Capitol Theater, and that's how we met.
Oh, really?
And then when he started managing Motley, that's when we started working together. And then, a few years into it, he's like, in '85, he's like, I got this band Bon Jovi, and they actually lived in your the next town over from where you were born or raised, and I think you guys will hit it off. And so we got together. I did my first photo shoot with them in my studio in New York for the Fahrenheit album, their first album, and we just hit it off. You know what I mean? We just hit it off right away. And then that year he went to Farm Aid, and they took me to Farm Aid, and I got pictures. Everyone wanted pictures with John. He was like the golden kid all of a sudden, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, anyone, John Cougar. And I was there just setting up the shots, and John loved the attention and loved what I did. And we just kind of just hit it off really quick. And then just, took me everywhere with him.
Yeah. How did we met him through Father Bob, right? What year was it we met, Mark?
So we met him 20 years ago. That's what I was just figuring out last night when we were talking. We flew in, and we actually met him at John Bon Jovi's brother, Matt Bon Jovi's bar called Elements. It was a restaurant.
Yeah.
And we were in there. We were having dinner, and Mark came in, and I recognized him instantly because, he shot all my favorite album covers, and I was one of those kids that would read every word of the booklet of CDs, every bit of the album cover, the back of the cover, everything, because I was always curious, who took the pictures, who produced, who mixed, all that. And I'd seen some interviews with him and stuff. So he walked through the door, and I look over at Lou Moriali, a mutual friend of ours, and I'm like, dude, that's Mark Weiss. And he goes, yeah. And I look over at Matt Bon Jovi, and I'm like, dude, that's Mark Weiss. And Matt's like, you want to meet him? I'm like, yeah. And so he motioned for him to come over, and he walked over and introduced him to us, and that's how we met. And then later that night, we ended up getting up on stage at some bar, and Mark was at the bar. And I think he went over there with us, with the whole group, and then he took a ton of pictures of us just on a. I don't know if it was a disposable camera or if it was with a phone. Like 20 years ago,
we didn't have phones then.
You couldn't take photos with your phone, right? So I think it was like a little disposable camera or something, but he took a bunch of pictures. He didn't have his big camera, but he took a bunch of pictures, and we were actually looking through all those last night. But that's how we met, and we became friends and kept in touch over the years. And the first official photo shoot that we did with him was on Motley Cruise. It was the first cruise that Lynham ever played. And the craziest thing is like there was a stop in Cozumel, Mexico. And the ship, everybody was adamant about, do not veer off the beaten path from like just stay in the groups of where the tourists are or whatever, because it's very dangerous and we can't guarantee your safety. So just stay in our little compound. You have to. We're like, okay. So Mark tells me, he goes, hey man, we're going to do a shoot as soon as we get to Cozumel. And we're like, okay, cool. We get off the ship. This crazy son of a bitch is like, come with me, guys. And like, so we leave the gates of the compound, which they told us not to. He walks up to a guy, just some dude with a black van, and he goes, hey man, can you take us to the Mayan ruins? I'll give you $20. And the guy was like, see, or whatever, and so the next thing I know, we're all getting in this van of somebody that we don't know, like it's just like we're like going, oh my God, are we gonna die? And then we just drove and drove and drove, and it felt like we drove forever. Like we had, I think the boat was docked for 5 or 6 hours. It took us about an hour and a half to get to where we were going. Finally, we did get to where we were going, the ruins and where the pyramids and all that stuff is, and and then we went all over the pyramids. We went inside like the churches that were on the property and everything else. I'm like, man, maybe we shouldn't be shooting in here. And Mark's basically, don't be a pussy, come on, And it's like, and so we did this photo shoot and everything. And we were looking at those last night because my wife took photos of him taking our photos.
Oh, that's
because
cool.
Of course, after it was over, I think the only photo that we saw from that was like one photo. We shot like for probably 2 hours. Mark sent me one photo that I have, and we never saw any of the other photos.
You know what that means? We're not too photogenic. We were having a rough week. We were looking like shit.
Well, that's the thing. He was like, man, your drummer just sweats profusely.
And Mexico. It was Mexico. It was 100 degrees outside. Of course he does.
And he's like
razor thin like Jake.
And he's like your bass player. We got to get him drunk to like loosen up or something.
By the way, all these are facts.
These are facts. I'm not arguing them.
I've known y'all for a while. These are all facts. So.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to help him out. It wasn't like a paid gig. I liked you guys. Like when we met down in Jersey, I just liked you guys, and I want anyone that has drive and talent. I want to help when I can, and I thought that would be a fun, expedition.
It was fun.
It was amazing.
And I will get the pictures out. We'll show them on the
No.
podcast.
You didn't put them out for a reason.
Of David sweating.
No, we need all those.
So the funniest part of the whole thing is when we were getting back on the boat, like you've got to go through like the metal detectors, and then the customs people are there and everything else. So when we're walking back on the ship, there's a dude that was walking on the ramp, and he slips off the ramp and he falls into like this little puddle of water or whatever, and he's drunk as fuck, and he's like, oh no, and he reaches in his pocket and he's like, all the cocaine I just bought is wet. So they detained him in Mexico, like as we're like walking on the boat, and we're like going, wow.
All this cocaine I bought. So what made you decide to do a book? Book's a big ordeal.
Well, it is, and I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And a lot of thinking and a lot of organizing, and I wasn't ready for it all these decades,
Was it your idea, or did you have somebody going, man, you should do a book?
Well, there was this guy named Jacob Button that kind of said, man, you should do a book, Mark, And I was just starting to do gallery shows and starting to embrace my past. Because at this point, it was actually probably 10 years ago already. I mean, I signed a contract like that long ago.
Yeah.
And at first it was just supposed to be a simple book. Because I didn't want to commit myself to anything too wordy. I didn't want to think about writing. I just wanted to do some kind of picture book, just something. Because I had an opportunity. A publisher approached me through the publicist Michael Jensen, who worked with Ozzy. And he introduced me to Raul over at Insight Publishing, and they wanted to do a book, whatever I wanted to do. So I'm like, all right, the simplest book could be of just metal bands when their hair was the highest. So that was 1985, 1986. That's when everyone did the hairspray. Everybody, Ozzy and Cinderella, Doc, they all did.
Right.
And I just thought it would be an easy way to do a book. And then I did it, and after about a year and a half of doing it, I looked at it and it looked pretty cool. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want this to be my first book. I want to do something with a little more substance to it. And this could be something I do later on,
Right.
which I plan to do. And so I was like, all right, maybe it should be something narrative. Maybe I should tell my stories. And that's what I ended up doing. So we ended up interviewing. I needed help telling the stories. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to do it, backtracking to when I was 12, I also, when I got my camera, I also that same summer got in a motorcycle accident, and I went unconscious, and it kind of screwed up my memory.
Wow.
And Glenn Bax was the guy who I just spent a week with on an RV over at Key Island Fest, which is an awesome place to go.
Yeah.
So we interviewed all my rock star friends, from Ozzy, Sammy Hagar, Ted Nugent. I mean, like probably over 100 of them, and telling the stories through, remembering things. And I would do the interviews. I had a couple people do the interviews. And as I'm listening to them back, it's supposed to be 5-10 minute interviews. They end up being some half hour, an hour. And I started, I don't know if I want to say remembering, but
brought back the memories.
yeah, it was bringing it back, and I was kind of figuring it out how it happened, and then hearing their part of it, and then hearing another guy in the same band telling his part, and then just kind of put together the story, adding a little bit of a poetic license to make it sound nice.
Yeah.
And that's how the book kind of got created, and then I said, all right, let's just do chapter by chapter, year by year. So I did the early years, talking about, the things that I talked about, getting my first camera, sneaking in, getting arrested at a Kiss concert, selling them, going to jail, going to Circus Magazine, and up until 1980 when I shot my first photo shoot, just the whole thing, and yearly thing. And so all of a sudden now everything's getting a little easier, but the years are passing by as they're getting easier,
Yeah.
So it took me a good 4 or 5 years to really finish it.
Wow.
And make it perfect the way I want it. And it ended up being perfect the way I wanted it. And it's it's a narrative. It's the photo shoots I ended up editing it to 600 pages because they told me they'd give me 300. And I didn't count when I had the pagination, it said 1, 2, and the 1 was really 2.
Yeah.
Because it was too
It was double-sided, yeah.
I didn't count it. So I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be...
Real experienced book writer.
By the way, I'm with him. I'm counting them 1, 2.
Now that's it.
Yeah.
So at the end of when I turned in the 600 pages or the 300 pages, it was really 600, and they were like, "We're not doing a book with 600 pages. Crazy? It's supposed to be under 3, 278 to be exact." And he goes, and then they saw the content of it. I mean, I'm glad I did it.
Oh, nice.
And they saw what I had, and they were like, "We're gonna make this like almost 400 pages." So they gave me an extra, 120 pages than I wanted. And then they also gave me gatefolds. There's 3 gatefolds in there. And
God, now you're using terminology that's just losing the room. Gatefold. What the hell is a gatefold?
well, it's in the book. It's like a 3-page pullout.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Insight Publishing. And, it's distributed through, it's in Barnes & Noble, Simon & Schuster's.
You can find it everywhere you got books. Hold it up, David. Make sure they see it.
Yeah.
You were talking about 85 and 86 being the biggest of the big hair years. One of my favorite things is on Monsters of Rock Cruise, you, Michael Wagner, and George Lynch did this Q&A all together. And Mark in 1985 did the Under Lock and Key album cover for Dokken. And George like on this panel in front of everybody, like calls you out, and he looks at the cover and he goes, "Man, why did you make us wear those stupid clothes on that album?" And Mark was like, "Dude, you showed up in those. I didn't have anything to do with it." He said, "I'm not your stylist. I'm your photographer. That's what you guys came in or whatever."
Yeah, I think the first time they saw those outfits was at the photo shoot. Like, and they opened it up and they were like, they did go, "What is this?" You know. And I said, "Look, guys, let's make the best of it. And put on your pink outfit, or not pink. It was, I think Jeff was purple and George was red and Mick was green and Don was blue, and they looked like circus outfits, really, you know." But at that point, that really was what was going on. But they just took it to the extreme, you know. Whoever, and they put it on, and everything got approved. I mean, they signed off on it. And I would say that was probably after that, everyone probably looked at it and go, "Let's tone it down a little bit."
All right, we found the limit. Here we go. Let's back it down from
The
here.
shoulder pads.
Yeah. And then probably in 86, it started toning down. 87, when Guns hit. Because the first time I shot Guns was in 86, and they were totally glammed up. I mean, glamour than anyone, really. Like,
They changed that pretty quick, though, didn't they?
it was quick, yeah.
Yeah,
But they released the album with that look. Maybe not, because the back of the album cover was pretty. It was down a little bit, but they were still like, you know, performing like that.
But the Welcome to the Jungle video, like the hair, is
Right,
like
yeah.
crazy big.
They were
Lots of makeup
embracing
and-
it like everyone was. But you know, it's about the music. The music really
Drives the image.
it drives it, and the music will hold whatever's going to be there. You know, like the integrity of the band. It's the music. It's not the look. And the look can change, and which it did with them. They decided to, you know, pull it out, and then everyone else decided to pull it out, and it just changed the, you know, the way things were from then on. Really,
That changed in the 90s when a whole different genre of music took a hold. How did that affect you?
Well, I thought like I was set because I had all these album covers, multi-platinum albums under my belt, and that I wouldn't, you know, have an issue, you know.
Right.
And what I found out is because I started working for Metal Hammer, and then they had me shooting bands like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and on assignment, and I would get photo shoots with these bands, but you know, they weren't fun.
They didn't want art direction or none of that
They
shit.
didn't want it. They wanted to just shoot it. So I just did what I had to do, but it wasn't like, you know, when I shot a band in the 80s, I was their friend for life, you know.
Yeah.
I went on the road with them. We hung out. We partied. And with these guys, I didn't feel a connection. They just wanted to play their music and not really have fun, really. You know what I mean? But getting back to the decade that rocked, the book, and the other reason why I did it, and what I call actually that book is my first portfolio.
Right.
I was so busy in the 80s shooting these bands, jumping from tour to tour to tour, doing album covers, going to Moscow, going to, you know, just having fun doing what I do. I never really, and I didn't need a portfolio. So everyone knew who I was. So this is like my first portfolio. Is the decade that rocked, and it meant a lot to make it the way it is.
Well, you talk a little bit about that in your book, like the first types of photo shoots, like what you just said with Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and bands not wanting to have fun. You talk about it with Danzig. You got hired to do the
Oh my God,
the
did
Danzig
you really?
shoot, and talk about that.
Well, everyone asks like, what was your worst photo shoot? You know,
I was about to ask it. I was like waiting on the lull to go. Who'd you walk away from? And you're like,
and I mean, I'm glad it happened because at least I have a story that when someone asked me that. But I mean, it wasn't a terrible shoot or anything. It's just that it wasn't fun. And when I try to get the best out of the band by doing what I do, having fun, they weren't that kind of band, you know. So they were 4 guys, and they were just. I had to make it was for the packaging for the first Danzig record, you know, Glenn's solo album, pretty much, with a skull in the front. and this is supposed to be going to be used for like a gatefold inside and promo and press. So they came to the studio first time I met them, and I just, my job is to make them look good. So I positioned him. Glenn was a little smaller than everyone else, so I had to use some tricks to make him look bigger because, he's a powerful guy. He's the focal, but you don't want to, so you don't line them up right in a row. So you pull them forward and you have the taller guys in the back, use a longer lens, and that's one of the things you learn in photography, how you position people, to make everyone look. So it might not make sense to just your normal Joe. So if anyone doesn't follow it, it's so that's what I did, and so they weren't very animated, which was fine. And Glenn, was a big guy, and his chin was up, and it looked too thick, So I wanted him to lean forward a little bit, and he and the other guys too, and they wouldn't really move around. When I said move to the left, everyone would just be looking at me like this, and so. What I do with the other bands too, and nothing different, I would go and kind of position them with my hands, like I would, move their. So when I got to Glenn, he said, "Don't touch me."
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I was waiting for that.
Maybe you should have bid them then.
All right.
It's time to go draw blood. Let's get.
So I went to, so I said, "Okay, let's finish this up." And I did a few more photos, and that was it. I was like, I didn't think anything. I cut the shoot a little shorter, but they were glad to leave, and I was glad that they left. Yeah. And then the next day, I talked to the art director, and just as gave him the film, and I said, "So how did everyone like the photos?" He goes, "Oh yeah, the band loved the photos, but they don't ever want to work with you again."
Oh my God! Wow.
But it was their fault though. I mean, hell, they didn't want to do. They wouldn't listen to how you want them to move, and they wouldn't let you position them or anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was their fault.
Well, they didn't like me handling them. You know what I mean? It's like,
That seems like how it was after Nirvana. It was like Nirvana. Once they hit, everything was just different. Everything was serious and calm. And
yeah.
Yeah,
so basically when that whole genre happened, I kind of, Skid Row was still doing a little bit of business, so I was working with them. I did a couple home videos with them, Oh Say Can You Scream and Roadkill. I did all the I started doing video. So so that was fun, and I was kind of, went to Iceland with them, went to Japan, so we did a lot of fun things while the other bands were kind of falling off the crack. But meanwhile, Skid Row, they had a #1 album. I mean, they were doing good, and then they imploded. And at the same time, like maybe a couple years later, '96, Kiss had their reunion. So I started working with them again, and that was fun for me. So that kept me busy. So there's like periods of time that you'd think, like, there were so many rock and roll photographers in the '80s. Everyone wanted to be a rock and roll photographer, but only a handful really kind of, moved on to and kept it going. And luckily I was one of them, but I had the drive to keep going. And I also was doing other things as well. In the '80s, I was doing shoots for Us Magazine, Entertainment Magazine, shooting like when E.T. came out. I shot Drew Barrymore as a child, like in the studio, and with, I shot Kim Basinger, I shot Alec Baldwin, Rodney Dangerfield, Cheech and Chong.
You survived shooting Alec Baldwin?
You shot Alec.
I knew somebody was going to come in now.
He's just bragging over here.
He's like,
That's freaking awesome. And like what you were saying, the people that you shot in the 80s became lifelong friends, like to this day, because everybody that I talk to, it doesn't matter who it is, they all have nothing but wonderful things to say about you. And a testament to how great your work still is like Sharon Osbourne still calls him, like he's still Ozzy's photographer. He called me, a year or two ago, I guess it was a year ago. He was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna come by your house and grab you, and we're gonna go to the Rainbow, and we're gonna like redecorate it." I'm like, "You're coming by my house?" "Oh yeah, Sharon flew me to LA. We're gonna redecorate the Rainbow with nothing but just Ozzy photos and stuff, because this album's coming out and it's gonna be this big release party." And I'm like, "Yeah." So literally, he comes, grabs me, and then we take off to the Rainbow, and then we spend the day just putting Ozzy prints and just everywhere. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
But to this day, like, he's still Ozzy's photographer. So that since '81.
Well, I just like to, when I shoot every time I shoot a new band back then, it's like having 4 or 5 new friends, and whether they sell 1 million records or they don't sell 1 million records, I mean, I'm still friends with Jacob.
Yeah.
He sold half a dozen.
Took his ass to the mine ruins. That didn't work out.
And I think there's actually at least, I know a couple of bands that probably wouldn't be where they are or who they are today if you hadn't they kind of met through you, didn't they? I know Skid Row.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Zach Wilde wouldn't be an Ozzy.
And it's like, I don't take credit for, like, I mean,
We're here to give you the
But
credit,
if you
Mark.
did, who would it be?
no, it's like everyone like it, to take Zach, like, it's just fate. I was with Ozzy and Sharon the night before my friend Dave met Zach, and I was with Sharon and Ozzy looking for this guitar player, another guitar player in Long Island. It didn't really work out, and I just said, I'll keep my eyes open. And the very next day, me and my friend Dave Feld went back to Jersey where our parents lived, and I said, let's go meet at this club. And he's like, nah, I'm tired. And I said, all right, well, I'm going, so I'll go and I'll tell you how it is. I ended up staying home, fell asleep. He went, and he called me the next day, and he goes, I found him. I'm like, what'd you find? He says, I found the guitar player for Ozzy. And he goes, this band called Xyrus is playing, doing cover tunes, and you got to meet this guy. I said, and he was so convincing. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, Ozzy's coming to my studio this afternoon. Bring him by. He's approving photos, so he'll be there, and let's let him meet him. Tell him to bring his guitar and a little practice amp. And he said, okay. So he brought Zach in, and Sharon and Ozzy were supposed to come by in the afternoon. And I told Sharon, of course, I said, Dave swears by this kid. Let's give it a shot. Okay, we'll be up there, Mark. So Zach comes up, and hours go by, no Ozzy. Sharon calls me up. Oh, we're going to be there. We're just hanging out with Andre the Giant, having some drinks.
That's the coolest
A lot of drinks. A lot of drinks.
Wow.
And, Zach's, he's being cool. I put him in the makeup room, and he had his practice amp, and he's playing away. Another couple hours go by. I said, same thing, Sharon. Oh yeah, we're gonna come by. They're having a drinking contest, but we'll be by. And so then I took some pictures of Zach while he's away, and I felt bad, so I took some photos while in between me working. And long story short, it's midnight already, and he's there for like 7-8 hours. And Sharon just said, "Look, they just like." They're both on the ground. They just drank each other. And she's like, take the tape and send me a photo that you took, Polaroid, and leave it at the hotel. We're flying to England, and we'll listen. I didn't think they were going to listen. It would probably be a big thing. When she got to England, she called me up. She goes, let's get him to an audition.
Wow.
And so that's what happened.
You just took video of him at your studio playing?
No, he had a cassette tape.
Oh, he already bought it with him.
Yeah, and
I remember it was just a photo and
yeah,
cassette.
and a photo and a cassette, and that was it.
That's crazy.
Casio does a podcast with a lot of those wrestlers from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe you didn't get into photographing them. That seems like something
Well,
you've been right.
I did go with Ozzy when he did the WWF, when he did that, and also Alice. So I went there. It was, it's fun stuff. So I got pictures with Hulk Hogan and those guys.
Man, if Ozzy can hang with Andre. I mean, the stories of Andre drinking are legendary.
Yeah.
He's got the one where he drank 127 beers in one sitting.
You couldn't even see a beer in his hand.
So if Ozzy's in the floor with Andre, they did some drinking that night, brother.
Yeah, that's insane.
And then to tie in the Sebastian Bach story, I met Sebastian when he was in Madam X in 1986. I did a photo shoot. I met the original Madam X with the other singer in 1985, and they were managed by Sharon Osbourne's father, Don Arden. And so that's how I met them. And then when they got the new singer, which was Sebastian, they flew me in. They had an investor. They flew me in, and that's when I met them and became friendly. A few months later, about 6 months later, I was getting married, and I told my secretary, I said, send them an invitation to the wedding. They were kind of fun, you know.
Nice.
Add some color to the wedding. I didn't even think they were going to come, but they did come. They showed up in this beat up car. They barely made it. Sebastian was there, and at the end of the night, they went up and jammed with, and Kevin Dubrow was there too. They did Bang Your Head, and they did some Zeppelin songs. And in the midst of all this, the John Bon Jovi's parents were at the wedding, and he was, you know, belting out, you know, showing off his vocal range to them at the table.
Sure.
And Dave Feld, my friend, who was my best man as well, knew the Skid Row guys. Snake, I didn't really know them that well. I know Snake used to come to the photo shoots because he was like John's really good friend, so he would be at some of the photo shoots I was at. But Dave kind of hung with him while I was shooting John, and he just kind of put it all together. And I guess a little nudge by John's parents also, you know, saying that he saw him, and they got him in the audition. And he came down once, and the first day he got thrown out of the bar that they played, and we got in a fight at White Castle, and so it was like instant, like he was in, and that's you know.
Yeah.
Call it what you want. I guess I was responsible.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Now at your wedding, it's hard to tell who's who because of the hair when they're headbanging. And I noticed, I think it's Sebastian Bach is headbanging and his hair's not moving at all. It's like out here and it's not moving. It's not waving. Or nothing.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned at your wedding that it was Sebastian Bach and Kevin Dubrow, and you just did a book on Kevin Dubrow, Keep On Rolling.
Wow.
And through your very own publishing company that you started with Mikhail.
Look at what all he's learned now. Second book.
Look at this.
You learn all the tricks from the first one.
Well,
Yes.
Well, you know, I like to have control. I don't like to, I mean, with A Decade That Rocked, I had to report to people. I mean, I've learned a lot, and I felt like I learned enough to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the way things are now, you really don't have to be in like Barnes and Noble, and you can do it online, and you could do it at shows, and you know, all these interviews like with yourself, and all these fan clubs that have millions of fans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can do it. So this came about by this girl Missy just called me and said, I really want to use your photo that you shot. It was on the cover of Faces magazine of Kevin. I'm doing a book. I was the fan club president, and I want to use it. I'm doing just an ebook. And I was like, well, how much money am I going to get for that? You know? So I said,
At least you're honest. That's a great first question.
so she's like, I really don't have anything.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm thinking, you know, Kevin was a really good friend of mine. He was at my wedding.
Yeah.
He gave me keys to his house when he was on the road or when he wasn't on the road back in the 80s after he, you know, hit with mental health. And then I said, you know what, send me the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
And she sent me the manuscript, and I kind of fell in love with it. You know, it was just really cool. And then I said, send me any pictures, any notes back and forth, and just anything that. And she sent me a bunch of stuff. Every day I'm getting more and more. And this is right when The Decade That Rocked was released. So I was kind of busy, but it was like intriguing me, all this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about doing anything with another book. I mean, I knew I wanted to do another book after The Decade That Rocked, but I didn't plan on doing something, taking another
And
ordeal
here this
out.
is falling in your lap like this.
Yeah. So basically the story is, her first concert, she used to in California. She was 16. She snuck into a show because she was underage, and it was just a band, and she didn't know who it was. And she saw them and fell in love with the band, and started following them, and then started like looked up where Kevin lived and sent him photos and, you know, saying, I love your show, and here's some photos from it. And then Kevin wrote back and called her, and then next thing you know, she's the fan club president.
That's great.
For Dubrow. I mean, she met them in 78, 79 when Randy was in the band. And so she had a friendship and on there. But then once she went to Dubrow, when Randy and Rudy left, she was, at every show.
Yeah.
And Kevin and she just, I don't know how it happened, but she ended up being the fan club president.
That's great.
And she helped out getting, like, when they needed fans there, she would be there, and she was really responsible for a lot of the success of getting the word out. And then when Quiet Riot came about, they asked her to be on board on the mental health, so she was the fan club president for that and got all the questionnaires together.
Mm-hmm.
When they did the video shoot, she got fans in there for the videos.
Filled the room up.
Filled the room. So she was had an intricate part of the success, and it's just really the story of that gap between, and it really shows Kevin's tenacity to be successful, because it was a long road,
Yeah.
like, a good number of years before, and trials and tribulations. So it's, the story is through her eyes, but it really shows, as Rudy says, it shows the three sides. There's three sides of Kevin. There was like the Kevin when he was with Randy, the Kevin when it was in Dubrow, and then when the mental health came out. And I asked Rudy to do the forward. He did that. And we interviewed Kevin's mom, Laura, to do the afterward.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I say a little bit. I have my memories. And then there's a photographer named Ron Sobel, who was Kevin's best friend, teenagers before Quiet Riot. They became roommates, and he was, Kevin was a photographer as well.
Yeah.
He shot Humble Pie, which I showed him in the book. And Ron was a photographer, and
just put it anywhere.
and so Ron took a lot of these photographs, and I asked him if he'd be on board. They said that we don't have a lot of budget, but he just said, yeah, let's do it. And he contributed. Yeah, he did the album cover for the Japan records.
Yeah.
And so a lot of his photos. And then I started shooting Quiet Riot in 1983 at the US Festival.
Yeah.
And then I did the Bang Your Head single sleeve. That was my first photo shoot, and we became friends.
One of the coolest things, you gave me the book yesterday, so I had time to look through it last night and read a lot of it. One of the coolest things is it's Missy's story of her relationship with Kevin and the band and everything else. And it's so cool because fans have such a huge impact on what happens to the band. We had somebody just like Missy with Lynham, a girl named Lisa Case, that she's the reason that we ended up on radio, the local radio show, our first song, Disco King. And like, she's the reason that we got a lot of record label interest, management interest, all that stuff, because she would be at all of our shows. She would constantly be evangelizing to everybody about Lynham. You've got to come see them. And getting everybody to call the radio station and everything else. And it's like, so that's so cool that's from the fans' perspective, and that's so cool that you did that. That's a great book.
Yeah, well, and also it's, like I said, it was going to be ebook, but all these fun, interesting things, these graphics. I mean, Mental Health, that album cover is just amazing.
Yeah.
And I had someone work on it with me, designer, Monica, and we worked on it for about a year. And it really wasn't, again, it was just a limited budget, and I couldn't ask for too many changes. So I was kind of accepting it. It wasn't really where I wanted it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I met Mikkel when right after The Decade That Rocked was released. And I just started, probably 6 months later, I started this book.
Right.
And she saw me struggling, going back and forth with Monica, who was amazing. But I do things backwards. I need to see it, and then I need to change it. And then I need to see it again, and then I need to change it back to where it was.
Yeah.
And say you were right.
Process.
But then I need to look at it another way.
Right.
I just need four. It's probably like musicians; they need to hear 4 mixes, and then which one do I like? But it takes a lot of time, and I mean, she was gracious with her time, and did a great job on this. And I was like, this is as best it's going to go. And Mikkel at the time, she owns a ballet bar company named Custom Bars, and she's did their website, but I really didn't know too much what she did. I know she has a bunch of people working manufacturing these things, and also I see her is behind, like I'm behind my computer doing my thing, and she's behind her computer doing her thing, and we're kind of leaving each other alone. But I'm not really paying attention to anything she's doing because it's not interesting to me, Ballet bars. I'm not a dancer, Ballet bars.
Well, that don't sum up marriage. I wasn't paying attention to what she was doing. We're here.
But I guess she was listening to my frustration and what I was doing. So it took a while, like maybe a year before she kind of like said, okay, Mark, I know Photoshop. I know how to make this better.
Quit mansplaining shit to me. I get it.
I know how to make this better, so you can take over from there, Mikkel.
Yeah, pick up your mic right here.
All right. So I grew up in Israel. So
no way. You didn't grow up in Alabama?
So I missed a lot of that scene. I grew up dancing since I was 3 years old. I was very focused on my dancing career. I was also doing some music. I was playing my piano or keyboard and doing some art. So I didn't have time to watch TV, MTV, and all that stuff. So I wasn't the fan or the groupie. I listen to a lot of classical music. I appreciate music from all different genres. But I overheard him talking about this book, and I decided that I don't want to work with my next boyfriend. That's not going to happen. So I kind of kept it.
I was the next boyfriend. She wasn't sure then.
Yes. So I actually, when I was 21, I came to the U.S. to pursue my dance career. I went to NYU School of the Arts, and I ended up starting my company because kids came along, and so I did web development and graphic design for 10 years. My ex was working in publishing and like pre-press, so I helped a lot with Condé Nast and all putting together all different graphic design and web development, and helping them a little with book design and InDesign and all of these different programs. And I didn't want to tell him anything.
So he didn't know that you had that background.
She was letting me suffer.
That's great.
Yeah, I kept it secret. So, but I overheard him talking about this fan, and in Israel, I don't think there is such a thing. Like, we're all focused on going to the army, and I don't know ourselves. So I couldn't believe the amount of material that she had. It was, and all her stories. I was like so intrigued, and then I saw the first draft of the book.
Right.
And it wasn't quite there.
To be nice.
I mean, it was amazing, but it was a little. I felt like I can really make it better, and just tune it a little bit.
And it was no discredit to Monica because she did.
She did an amazing job.
She was just following my. No. Monica was the designer.
Oh, the designer
that we hired, but she was just listening to my direction.
Right.
So it's like, I told her what to do. She did it. So not to discredit her because she did.
She did an amazing job.
Right.
But here and there, I felt like it could use a little fine tuning. And I knew that they had no budget, so I said, "All right, I think I can help you." And he didn't know that I know all that, so he kind of stopped me all the time, like, "Oh, don't do that, don't touch that." I kind of did it before.
Did you eventually have to tell him, "Look, this is my background. Just sit down. I got it."
Yes, eventually he saw from my skills that
I designed Apple's website.
I did web development with graphic design for 10 years. Did some publishing stuff, so I knew the field.
And it's also nice to have someone because Mikkel moved in with me, and we had I had my office. We have 2 computers.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to not wait until that other person
You could
could
bounce right back and
Instant.
forth.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. So we would. It was a collaborative effort to perfection.
Exactly.
How
So-
long did y'all know each other before you figured this out?
I know, that's what I was saying.
Like about a year, right? Before
How do
we.
you keep something like that quiet for
I
a year?
know.
She's just biting her
Was it a year?
Maybe 6 months or
Okay.
so, yeah. But I tried really hard not to reveal that part of me.
And
So-
now that
so-
we've brought you both here, she's got another secret she wants to tell.
Oh, we're on Jerry Springer all of a
Time
sudden.
to reveal the next lady.
So we were trying to come up with a name for the publishing company, and I don't know how did we. Who thought of that?
I don't know. Together, I think.
So
She came out with it, guys.
Clearly.
So it's called Mima Publishing. So M-I for Mikkel and M-A for Mark. So M-I-M-A.
That's cute.
Why not, mommy?
Mommy,
Yeah.
So you're responsible for putting this whole thing together, huh?
So we're
Yeah.
quite proud of.
Yep. So
And that's
we're,
available everywhere as well.
Well, right now it's going to be through the decadethatrock.com, and we're going to offer signed copies by Missy and myself, and we throw in photos sometimes, different packages. And what we're doing is on March 11th is the 40th anniversary of Mental Health.
Wow.
So we thought it'd be a good time to do a virtual book release event. It's available now, but on March 11th, the plan is to have it appear. We already did about 10 interviews. We have Stephen Piercy, Don Dokken, Ron Sobel, Missy, Dee Snider, Rudy Sarzo, Kevin's mother, Laura, and a bunch of others. And we're going to be editing it together and going to I call it like a virtual book release event, and it's available on meethooklive.com. So you can go there and you buy a ticket for $10, and you can tune in on March 11th when it premieres, or you can watch it anytime up to the end of the month, March. And there'll be other offers like for Prince, Quiet Riot Prince, that never before seen.
Wow.
And we'll be showing some of the book in there, and just a lot of insight of Kevin through all these people like that knew him so well, like Ron Sobel, who did the pictures and lived with him, his mother, Rudy, who really opens up on how the chain of events, how it all happened. And, Stephen Piercy talking about the old days, because, they were around this, Rat and Quiet Riot were really like there, 83, 84, that's when they broke. Dee Snider, just giving creds to his voice and how respected he was as a singer, and just to hear it now, I feel like he deserves the cred and for his family and people that knew him. And really that album and every interview they always give him credit. It was the first band, heavy metal band, to go to #1, knocked Michael Jackson out of the Billboard charts.
What was the last album?
The Decade That Rocked.
For the Meat Hook.
Oh, Meat Hook Live. Yeah, meethooklive.com.
We'll put it up on
Yeah,
the graphic.
don't go to MEAT Meat Hook. I've already. I'm subscribed, but I'm just saying it's not for everybody. You know what I mean?
We got a couple of emails from people that wanted to ask you questions. One of them you've already answered. Brad Yancey asked, who's one of the most hard that would not cooperate with you in a shoot. That's got to be Glenn Danzig. But he also asked if you think Zakk Wylde would have the success he's had after Ozzy that he's had. Does that surprise you that he's had that success?
No, and I mean the reason why I don't take credit for their success. I mean, even though it's I opened some doors because Zakk had talent. Sebastian has talent, but it does take a certain it's fate, and Zack's talent is undeniable, and the Ozzy was a springboard to where he was going to go. I mean,
Right.
look what he's done. He's like the guy, He's in
Playing with
Pantera now,
Pantera yeah.
Oh yeah, he's playing with Pantera. I forgot about
Maybe you
that.
heard of him. Man, he's incredible. I think the way he looks, you don't take him as serious as you should. They came through with the Jimi Hendrix tribute tour that they came through. I mean, the first thing he did was he sat down at the piano, and you're like, what is Zakk Wylde doing at the piano? We're at a Jimi Hendrix tribute show. But he was amazing. You know what I mean? It's just like his character of Zakk Wylde, kind of, you don't take him, some people probably don't take him as seriously as they need to, is an incredible musician, top to bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
Great character.
We got one more email too from Brent Chandler. Ask Mark if he had not gotten into photography, what occupation would he have gotten into? If not rock music, like photography, what other kind of photography you think you would have?
Well, I wouldn't have gotten into photography. I would have had a landscaping business. You know, it's like, you fall into things however you fall into them. I was always at a young age, always worried like what I was going to be when I grew up. I knew I didn't want a 9-to-5 job. I knew I didn't have the scholastic skills to be a brain surgeon.
Yeah.
And, or an accountant or anything. I didn't like school. I couldn't remember things. You need to remember things,
right?
To do to be a brain surgeon,
right?
To be a lawyer, to be an accountant, to be anything. You need to remember. To be a cashier. I mean, I tried to, just be a cashier at a food place when I was a semester in college, and
fuck that up.
And I couldn't even do that. So
have you found other stuff you like photographing besides rock music?
Naked women.
Man, that's great. I knew we had something in common.
And now we're back at meathooklive.com.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you should.
Yeah. So during COVID, I couldn't shoot rock stars, so I started taking walks, and I never really did before. There was one trail where I live in Highlands. And I just walked on this, and the ocean's there, and there's these big rocks, and I saw a formation of rocks that people build. I mean, everyone's seen them, right? They build rock formations. And I saw someone building it, and I never really even seen it before. And so I watched it, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I took a picture of it. And it wasn't that big. It was maybe like 2 feet tall, not even, And I did it with my phone in a perspective where it looked like it was like 6 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing that, and I posted them. I have an Instagram called, I made a little story about it when I went with Ozzy in '86. I went to Stonehenge.
Yeah.
And I photographed that, and I used that as my lead photo. And I also call it I Want to Rock Stonehenge. I Want to Rock Stonehenge.
Yeah.
So that's my title on Instagram. I spelled it wrong, Stonehenge wrong. So it was the thing. I just went with it, I didn't look it up. So you'll find it. It's on my. So I started shooting these rocks, and every time I did a walk, I would do one or find one that someone did, or I would start doing them myself.
Yeah.
And then I found a Barbie doll on the ground, and I put the Barbie in there and used her as a silhouette.
Yeah.
And it looked like a real woman,
Yeah.
And so I shot that. It made it realistic. So I just had fun with it. So now every time I go somewhere on vacation or something meaningful,
right?
If someone passes away or whatever, I'll build a little rock thing and take a picture, just to help my memory too, to help tell the story.
For sure.
So what's it called again?
I Want to Rock Stonehenge.
Yeah, pull that up on Instagram.
It's on Instagram.
There is an NFT too, I think.
Oh yeah, NFT.
Yeah.
You gotta misspell that shit though.
Yeah, you can't spell
I don't even know it.
By the way, you spelled it Henge. Oh, you forgot the E. I was about to say, I Want to Rock Stonehenge.
Did you shoot Shannon Hagar?
Yeah.
Well, when?
78. It was the first time when I was sneaking in, and then in the early 80s when he did a solo. But I really got to know him when he was with Van Halen. I was the photographer at Monsters on the Monsters of Rock tour with Metallica, Dokken, and
I saw that Memphis.
yeah. So I was hired to do the tour book, and I got to really know Sammy then, and we became friends, and yeah, still like when on his 60th birthday, he flew me to Cabo to document photograph his 60th birthday party.
He rolls it out too, doesn't he? He's like the best.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. You know, he doesn't have to do this. You know, he just does it because he loves it.
I've noticed something about people that are like actual friends with him versus people like us that are fans. People that are actually friends with him, they all say Hager. Every one of them says Sammy Hager. I heard you say Sammy Hager just a little while
Isn't
ago.
that the same thing?
Like yeah, like all of
We say Hagar.
We always say
Hagar.
Hagar, like all the Van Halen
Hager.
fans. But everybody that I know that's like friends with Sammy, they all say Hager. So maybe we've been saying it wrong.
I don't
all
know. It
these years.
just comes out of my mouth that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, we thought it was some inside baseball shit.
Sammy Hagar.
Like he threatened you with your life. Look, you're one of my close friends. You can start calling me Hager now.
Let me ask you this: did you keep shooting Motley after, like, on down more albums?
Oh yeah, I mean, I shot in '85 when they went to more. I mean, they have different looks, you know.
Yeah.
So in '85, when Poison was big and they had the whole glam thing,
Theater of Pain.
yeah, Theater of Pain, they hired me to do this shoot with in gangster outfits. And we did a poster set, and I rented this Rolls Royce. We had a backdrop we brought in. It was a big production, and each guy had these tailored tuxedo suits, and we got Tommy guns, and it was a whole concept. We had some girls in there, and it ended up being each one had their own poster, and then there was a group photo, and that was for their tour book and for promo. And then after that, through the decade and
Vince came back.
yeah, I mean,
The Generation Swine. Did you?
yeah, I mean, through the years, I've done stuff, but after the 90s, the magazines really weren't interested in photos, so there really wasn't. I used to shoot a lot on spec because I used to sell them to the magazines, and once after the 90s came, there really wasn't a market for it. So I would shoot bands still to this day. You know, when the stadium tour came, I took photos, but what do you do with it? You put them on social media. You know, if they need photos, I mean, you know, they bought a bunch of photos for their merch, you know, because now everyone's embracing the 80s, even Bon Jovi, you know. So a lot of my archives from back in the day are now seeing the light of day through their merch, the T-shirts, selling them.
Hey, you wanted me to remind you about the Rockin' Pod thing you want to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, so in Nashville, I think it's March 17th. Yeah.
This is going to come out the very 1st of March. This would be perfect
Okay.
timing.
Yeah, so I got asked to be a guest, and there was only a handful of guests. Now I just looked with Jacob the other day, and there's like a whole bunch of people. So it's going to be really turned into a really nice event. And I'm going in there. I'm gonna.
What is it though? Describe it.
It's I don't really know.
It's just this thing.
I say yes to everything, you know. I was like, all right, you want me there? All right.
Let's party. I assumed you knew all about it when you said you wanted to talk about it.
You want to go get lunch after this? Just say yes.
Yeah.
But what I found out is it's a bunch of people that have podcasts like yourself, and they set up booths. And I think they interview people there, or they just promoting it, and fans come there. They're turning into very NAMM-ish, where the crowds come in, fans, and I think they're setting up where a lot of the artists will be doing autograph signings. I think. Don't you got to go on the site and you'll check it out. But it seems like a really good organization. This might be the second one. I'm not even sure. I think Vinnie Vincent was at the last one, which caused the buzz. But it's just another outlet for fans to meet the rock stars and to
Before they pass, because God knows, it seems like every time you turn around, one's passing, and you're like,
true.
damn it, I should have gone and seen them.
So yeah,
Well,
that's fun.
thanks for bringing us down, David. Appreciate that,
It's a
man.
legit concern.
We
you
were
know?
riding high. You're like, yeah, they're probably all going to be dead by March, but thanks, buddy.
I'm sorry, guys. I'll let y'all carry on. I'll be over here if y'all need me.
I'm also doing a event on that week, the same week, March. I think it begins March 17th in Jacksonville at Gallery 725.
Yeah.
And they're going to be displaying my photographs. And I'll have a book signing, and then at the end of that weekend, so I'll be coming to Nashville and then driving down to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And setting up shop there. And at the end of the week, I'll make an appearance. I'll do some radio. And also, we're going to do something a little different. When Monster on the Mountain last year, Vince Neil headlined.
That's the one he fell off the stage.
It was, yeah.
I saw that video. That's crazy.
So before he fell off the stage, he was in great spirits. It was a slip. I mean, it's one of those
It's happened
setups.
to every single person.
Yeah. Mikkel and I created on canvas almost a life-size picture of one of my photos from 1984 of Vince, and Mikkel embellished it. And I always, I like to step it up a little bit, make something a little different, makes it a little arty. So I talked her into using her creative skills and embellishing, adding some, runs and nothing too that takes away from the photograph, but just adds to it, complements it. So we did it, and we brought it with us, and because I was doing a book signing there too, and everything was for sale, and Vince fell in love with it and wanted to buy it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
no kidding.
And then after he fell off the stage, we gave it to him. I felt bad. I figured it would cheer him up. You know?
You just cost me $10,000. Here you go.
So we took a picture with it, and it was the first collaboration Mikkel had, and I showed it to the gallery owners, and they said, "Why don't you do one live here? Like have her." Do something live.
Yeah, live.
Whoa.
And create. So I said, well.
Does that make you nervous to do some shit like that live?
She didn't okay it yet.
Yeah.
I'm putting a little pressure on now.
Yeah.
And we're also going to, if we can, we're going to try to have like maybe one from each year, a life-size piece of canvas, and have her do it beforehand, and they'll frame it, and that will be waiting for them. So that's something special and different that will be there, along with like maybe 50 photographs of mine from the book.
Yeah. You told me on the way over here you have a TikTok page, right?
Yes.
What's going on with your TikTok page? Because I'm out of the loop on TikTok.
Are you doing dances?
I know, right? They got a lot of views.
Are you dancing?
Yeah.
I can't wait to see if he's dancing.
No, he's not. He showed me a couple of them. He sent over a couple of links.
No, I mean, everyone's on social media. I embraced, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, years ago when everyone else did. But I never felt emotionally attached to it. I just have, put up birthdays of rock stars and their passing to remember them, and throw on some images, maybe a few stories from the book I would put in there. So, I mean, I take it seriously, but I never let any of me in there. And I wanted to, I just didn't feel it. So when TikTok came out, I felt like that could be a place where people are telling a little more stories. I mean, there's a lot of crap on it. Girls dancing around and all that, which gets millions of views. Not that I would know that.
Yeah.
It's all good content, and it's fun, and I'm going to keep doing it at all my events. We're going to do one right here too. Yeah. When I walked in here with my thing, I just do
that's what that was for.
Yeah.
When you were telling us you zipped your penis up.
I did have an accident today. I zipped my cock up and
I got that on the. You get all these
Put me on
things.
Dick Doc later.
I did not think about that. It's going to get a lot of views. Now I'm going to be asked every time somebody sees me, how's your dick doing?
How's the Frankenbean?
Don't they do that anyway?
Yeah. They ask you that anyway when they see you, don't they? How's your dick doing?
So Jacob was telling me, and I forgot when he filled in for Tom Kiefer,
Right.
on the
On the Monsters of Rock cruise.
Yeah, and he was telling me a funny story about a bunch of people looking at him, and some people weren't sure if it was like.
It's like Tom got AIDS. What happened to Tom?
No, Tom looks young,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, some of the band members' wives from the other bands. Eddie Trunk introduced the band, and he walked out into the crowd, and he was standing next to a couple of their wives that had been drinking, and they were like going, "Oh my God, Tom hasn't aged at all." and Eddie's like trying to say, "Well, that's not Tom. And they can't hear him because it's so loud." And they're just like, "Wow."
And that way you busted your head? Or no, that was
Kiss.
Well, tell us that story.
Yeah, I mean, you know the slides on the cruise? Like,
Sure.
you ever been on a cruise, guys?
Jacob got on a slide?
No.
Not only has Cassio been on a cruise, but he was on the cruise with Vince Neil.
No, we have to tell you the story in just a second. I think it's hilarious, but
It's amazing.
Wait, how did you bust your head on a slide?
So we were playing. It was one of the first shows that I ever played with Adler, and we were booked on the Kiss cruise. And our first show was in the big theater, and then the next show after that was out on the pool stage. And I saw that giant water slide that they had that went up. There was no water in it. They drained the water slide to keep people from, getting on it. And I did exactly what they didn't want you to do. So, like when I sing, I have a wireless microphone. So I jumped off the stage and I started running up the water slide, and singing a song. I don't know. We're singing "Sweet Child of Mine" or something. I don't remember. And then coming back down the slide, I was running, but I'm 6'5", and I didn't duck enough, and I hit my head on the top of this part of a water slide, and I actually scalped my head.
Dude,
like completely.
It was the most metal moment he's ever had on stage. It's like, is this part of the show?
Yeah, so I get back on stage, and we still have 3 more songs, and so I play the show. There's blood just coming down my head, but I was wearing a bandana, so it's like a lot of the blood's getting soaked up in that. So as soon as we finish, we walk over to the side of the stage, and everybody's wanting to do pictures and all that stuff. So we do all that, and finally, somebody comes up and is like, "You have to go downstairs right now." And this is where I found out the cool thing about cruise ships. Underneath the ship, there is another city down there. There's a full-blown hospital. There's a full-blown jail. There's a morgue. There's all kinds of stuff.
A morgue?
Yeah, because people die on cruises all the time. A lot of old people cruise, and so it's like their final, voyage or whatever. So people die constantly on cruises.
You sound like they know they're going to die.
Yeah.
Bobby, man. Never seen it.
Yeah, so anyway, they have all that stuff. But so I went to the hospital down there, and they ended up having to like stitch my head up and stuff, and when we took the headband off, you could wring blood out of it. It was just crazy. Yeah. So that particular ship, it was what was it, Royal Caribbean or something like that, whatever cruise line it was, they actually removed the slide completely for all future music cruises.
Because of Jacob.
Yeah.
Do you want to run through your story real quick about Vince Neil?
I'll tell that later.
Yeah,
Go back in the archives and listen to that episode.
yeah, it's great. Y'all have any more questions? His bladder's probably about to burst.
I think all of ours are about to burst.
We appreciate you coming in. Is there anything else that you can think of that you wanted to promote today?
No, I know. Jacob asked me about the Night Songs album cover.
Oh yeah,
Cinderella, and it's kind of a good story.
Yeah, I want to hear that. I forgot about Night Songs. That's right.
Yeah, so that was again during the big hair days, 1985.
Yeah,
86, and I did the Night Songs shoot outside, and it was during the day. I arranged it it's called Night Songs, but I shot it during the day.
right.
And Tom came to me and he goes, "Why are we shooting this during the day? It's not called Night Songs." And I said, "I shoot day for night." and he's like, he didn't know what. He goes, "What?" I go, I shoot day for night. And for anyone that knows photography, you can shoot daylight and use flashes. The flashes have so much light on it, it kills whatever's available light is there. So I wanted to be able to have control and to see what I was doing and see the bands, because if it was dark and the flash hits, you really don't see the reaction. Mm-hmm. It's there, and it was outdoors. We had generators going, so I wanted to do it during the day, and it didn't affect anything. I had smoke going, and it looked like it was at night.
Right.
And when he saw it, he trusted me, Right. And when he saw it, he's like, Oh, okay. I get it now.
Yeah,
You shoot day for night.
I shoot day for night.
that's great.
You trusted me.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you got to trust the photographer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
I always do.
Sometimes.
Well, the book is The Decade That Rocked. Also, Keep On Rolling. Both available from the website, thedecadethatrocked.com.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can get signed copies from there, too.
Yeah,
right?
there's all different packages. You throw different photos in. I give postcard sets, and yeah.
He'll come deliver it to your house. If it's the right amount of money, he'll come hand deliver it to you. So.
And if anyone has like a gallery, cool rock and roll gallery that want to, have me there,
Yeah.
and is into promoting and me telling some stories and selling some books and
Here we are.
having some fun.
Here's the website right above
That's
you.
it.
There it is. Over 1,200 reviews.
It's actually over 1,300 now.
Do people give you shit reviews? What kind of asshole would ever give a shit review? It's such a great book.
Well, there's actually all of them are 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
And these are from Amazon buyers.
Yeah.
There's one person that gave me like a 1 because it was damaged, like the thing was damaged.
And
that was your fault.
I know, right?
Because you personally
I
delivered
kicked
it to
this
their
one-
house.
Yeah, I kicked it down the block before we put it in the
Sorry, I got you a book across the country. Sorry, the corner got bent. Apologize.
But if you look on rock books,
Yeah.
they don't really give a lot of reviews, but something like I think mine's the first book that really covers that genre and that decade in such detail because
Right.
I feel like I was like the guy through the 80s that kind of went with the image, went with the bands. This band was big, they were little, they were big,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's a bit of a history. And
People actually took the time to write very lengthy reviews.
That's good.
and
Yeah.
tell the impact that he made on their.
And also, it's something about that decade, that generation, that's very passionate. Still today, when you go to a concert, they're not old looking, they have that youth in them, and I'm glad to be part of it and share my stories and my images.
Yeah, man. We were so excited to have you on. Like, this is huge for us. This
It's been cool as hell.
might be the biggest guest we've gotten, dude. This is great, and we appreciate you taking time to drive through Alabama. And we knew that took a lot to come here, so we probably thought we tell everybody when they pull up here, it looks like they're getting out for a gangbang at this place.
Well, we brought
That's later.
banjo.
MeatHookLive.com.
He said brought his banjo. Well, guys, definitely check out his books and check out the website. He's always got appearances coming up. Do you have any coming up after March that you know of right now?
I don't know.
Book him. You
Yeah,
could
book
always
him.
book him for a gallery. So
But just go to the Decade That Rock, sign up on my mailing list. We'll get you everything out there. And, if you never know. And, if you're interested in photo workshops, just send an email. I'm not hard to find. You can direct message me.
I'll publish a book for you, yeah.
he's
Somebody's
like,
got a
"Damn it,
good
honey,
rock story.
Don't sign me up for
Mommy
more
Publishing, Mima Publishing.
Or if you need a ballet bar, custombars.com.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Ballet bars.
BARRES.
Well, thank y'all for tuning in, and make sure you like and subscribe and leave some comments on the YouTube channel. We need some more comments. So thank you, everyone. Anybody else have anything else to say? Am I closing us out?
Yeah, I think you do.
We're out of here. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you.
You get away with love.